Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Wednesday, April 8th, 2026, and today we are live to talk about, well, whatever you all want to talk about. So let's do it. All right. How is everyone doing? This is my, third time trying this. So far, so good. It looks like Mike has not scolded me for not looking at his texts. That's good, because the last time I somehow missed that. I probably was talking for like 10 minutes and you all were like, dude, you're nobody hears you, which is cool. It's fine. All good. But happy Wednesday, everyone. I hope you all are doing well. As we trickle in, make sure to get any questions that you have and any questions you left on the last live to Mike. And Farmer Mike is in there in the chat helping out. And you will notice all morning that I have a little bit of a cold and not a cold. I have allergies. I woke up this morning and the allergies are just like, hey, buddy. And so, which is not cool. They could have chosen a better day. But anyway, I will be dealing with a little sniffling and maybe even occasionally a sneeze, which could be exciting. So I'll be dealing with that this morning. But otherwise, I feel great. And anyway, like I said, Mike is in there in the chat helping out. I am going to get one ad read out of the way here real quick. And then we will, like I said, as you trickle in, get those questions to Mike, ask him about his farm, ask him about how it is farming in Utah versus farming in here in Kentucky. I'll bet that is a fun conversation for him to have with you all in the chat there, giving him some extra fun work to do there. All right, but we're going to knock out a quick ad read before we really dive in. This one from our friends at Rimmel Greenhouses. Whether you're growing tomatoes for market, flowers in the spring, or vegetables for your family, growing in a high tunnel protected from the weather provides the right environment for harvest you can count on. Rimmel Greenhouses are strong, durable, and easy to assemble, offering the quality you need to grow productively year-round. The team of experts at Rimmel Greenhouse Systems will be your trusted partners to ensure you get exceptional value from your greenhouse or high tunnel investment. Visit Rimmel.com today to get growing. All right, how's everyone doing? Are you getting some questions in? It looks like it. Saying hi to Mike. That's good. Sorry for the live thing. It's like every month YouTube makes it just a little bit more quirky for me, which is fun. It keeps me on my toes. I'm in my 40s now, so I need, things to keep me youthful, right? And otherwise, yeah, things are good here. We had I didn't sleep super well last night. We had somebody broke it. Like, you all know I help run the rec league soccer. So I had to deal with somebody had broken into the concession stands, just some kids. And anyway, that was like a whole ordeal yesterday and last evening. So I didn't sleep super well, but I feel strangely good this morning beyond the allergies and the lack of sleep. So it could be an eventful morning, but again, get your questions in to Farmer Mike there in the chat. And let's see, let's start out. STL is alive. Is that St. Louis? You all are maybe over there in St. Louis. Good soccer town, St. Louis. Asks, how do you deal with pill bugs? They're eating my peas. Well, it depends. I mean, is it really the pill bugs eating your peas? Usually what pill bugs do is that, and I think I talked about this in a recent episode, but usually what they're doing is they're consuming all that rough organic matter on the surface and around the surface. And sometimes that just kind of parlays into them eating their turnips or whatever's kind of flat against the ground. I'd be a little surprised to hear they're eating peas, but that's not impossible. Usually they're eating the stuff that is right there against the soil. So it would be turnips and sometimes they'll eat the base of plants. It just depends on the pill bug. Obviously there's lots of different arthropods. Is that right? No, what's the term I'm looking for? But anyway, they lots of different pill bug type, roly-poly types. So there could be a variation on what they are willing and wanting to eat. Now, for control of something like that, there's a few things. One, you can kind of pull back any mulch. If you have a heavy mulch right around your crops, a lot of times that sort of attracts pill bugs. They like the moisture, they like the cover. So you can pull that back just a little bit from your plants and that may help. You can trap them with rocks or cardboard, and then you can either move them to a compost pile or out into the yard or just away. You can also drown them, but I mean, they're not bad. They're you kind of want them because they're shredders, right? All that organic material that's kind of rough on the surface, they're kind of breaking that up and making it more available and smaller, more available to smaller and smaller microbes, which will make the nutrients that they're in more available to you. And so ideally you're not like getting rid of them, but you do not want them eating your plants. So if they are eating your plants, that's the best way, is just kind of pull that mulch back so it's not so tempting for them to be right up against the plants. And I mean, there are probably other, like if it's just like you try those few things and it's still not working, you could probably, get, I don't know, there's probably treatments that you could use, but I would start there. Just start with those like easy natural options. But yeah, just overnight, like a nice moist cardboard will attract them. They'll get underneath that. Then you can pick it up, you can scrape them off, and then that will get rid of some of the populations. Yeah, that's where I would start. Good question. And shouts to good soccer towns like St. Louis. At Brackets Petals and Produce writes, what soil minerals do you add? Green sand, azomite? I don't do, it's funny. I was just talking to somebody, like we're doing this Organic Association of Kentucky project. It used to be called Climate Smart. I don't know what it's called now, because I don't know. They freak out about the term climate for some reason. But anyway, they like, basically this project, they come and they do like soil testing. This is really awesome, actually. I wish this was available to everybody, and it kind of is, I think, depending on what your state did. But basically, it's like this project where you fill out this. I don't know. It's like what do they call it? It's like a big worksheet that you do from like everything from like economics to biodiversity and all these things for your farm. And one of them was like amendments, and we were talking about that. And I don't add a lot. Like we don't do a lot of amending beyond compost, and I'll add some alfalfa meal, mulches, like, some compost mulches and other mulches. But in general, I'm not adding a ton of rock amendments, or, I'll add kelp sometimes, and just for micronutrients. But even that just feels like, I don't know if this is necessary. And I don't know, we're going to do some testing, and we'll look at it a little bit more closely this year with that group, and just see if there's anything like I'm really out of balance on. But sometimes I'll add a little boron. Sometimes I'll add, just some of those more fluid nutrients that are more mobile in the soil. I don't generally, because I'm using so much compost, have to add things like phosphorus, but and occasionally they recommend lime or something. And I just am like, I don't know, I just don't like mining all these materials and then bringing them into our farm. That's kind of like a personal feeling, or just a personal philosophy. But I'd rather get some of those nutrients. I'd rather the plants mine those, and then bring in, various mulches, grass clippings, composting, wood chips, that sort of stuff. And then that way I'm not like digging a giant hole in the earth to get my vegetables, 10%, 5% better. Just, it doesn't feel necessary for me. Now, if I'm doing like hardcore, if I really, really have to make every inch count, I'm probably much more fixated on that nutrient balancing. But then again, I mean, still, like, you could do a lot with foliar sprays and stuff. And I think we have a Patreon question coming up about that soon. I can talk a little bit more about that at a later date. Just because it's a complex subject. So I like to make sure to have that stuff, have the good info for you at the ready. But good question. Yeah. I mean, green sand, not so much. I'd prefer to get a lot of my phosphorus, nitrogen, potassium, all those sort of macronutrients. I'd prefer to get those from compost, just because, mining some of those things is not ideal. They're finite, right? So like, we don't want to overmine them and overpollute and that sort of stuff. So anyway, that's kind of my feeling on that. At Jake Dupp 77, Jake Dupp, it's fun, asks, starting my farm this year, would be starting later around May, June. Any suggestions on what to plant in Southeast Pennsylvania? Well, it depends. I mean, it depends on what what you mean by starting. Like if you're plowing it up in May/June, you probably are not going to want to do much until the fall. That would probably be like, your fall brassicas and stuff. Depends on where you said Southeast Pennsylvania. So your climate's actually pretty similar to mine. So yeah, but you get colder nights than I do, which is nice for those brassicas. So you could do like broccolis and cabbages and, Brussels sprouts and that sort of stuff, which you'd probably start there in late July, and then you'd be planting those. But that gives you time to start your gardens, maybe even do like a little fallow period, like what we call bare fallowing, just to get those weeds in check. You could even maybe throw in a round of buckwheat or something just to get a little bit more life in them right before you plant. And then you could plant those in like July, August, September, and then get a really nice fall garden. And then that way you're not pushing too hard to try and have like, I don't know, if you're starting a farm, I mean, for me, ideally you take an entire year to get your farm set up. So like you get your wash pack station, you get, like all of your marketing stuff ready, you get your, like any sort of infrastructure that you need, greenhouses, all that stuff built, you get your gardens built. It's not possible for everybody, but that to me is like the ideal, is that you just have a whole year, you get all the weeds in check, you get everything ready, and then you can start. But most of the time we don't have that sort of time frame. Like that's a lot to ask for most growers, because that, it's hard to not have an income for that long. You have to have another job or something. But that's the ideal. But for me, if I was starting that late, I would probably work towards a fall garden. Maybe not plant too much in the spring, just because you'd have to keep up with a lot of weeds once you break into that soil. But it depends on how you're starting it, how you're starting those gardens. All right. Good question. Good luck. At Cole Dini, that's fun, asks, right north of Kentucky in Evansville. I love Evansville. It's a good little town. I'm not a big Indiana fan, but Evansville gets a pass. Anyway, starting a market garden this year, any clay heavy soil secrets? No, the secret is time. Clay is just, like thick. It takes a long time for those roots to kind of work their way in there. In some ways, clay can be nice because it can be, heavy, like high in nutrients. Just depends on the clay. Some of the old worn out clays can be tough in that way, but it can be higher in nutrients. It can be have a good cation exchange capacity, so it retains nutrients really well. It retains water decently well, sometimes too well. It can be really physically difficult to work with. So time is a big factor in it. Also, just if you can get some organic matter injected in there from the very beginning, so like a good layer of compost, worked in with whatever nutrients, or biochar. That's another amendment that I didn't talk about earlier. But if you had some good activated biochar, inoculated activated biochar, to get that into the soil from the jump, that will help a lot, because clay's just difficult. And then if you can do some cover cropping, that will help. But it's funny, I was showing that same person that was here for that oak thing I was talking about a minute ago. I was showing them the soil. And I wish I had a picture of it, because it was basically like I dug into this one spot. It's our hardest spot. It's like super compacted. It's always been the most difficult plot on our garden. And I was digging it out, and you see like the first 6 or 8 inches is like dark, really beautiful soil. And then it's just heavy clay still. And this is after, how long have we been here? Since 2020. So this is our 5th growing season, 6th growing season. 21 was our first, whatever that makes. And it was, that was very cool to see, because the crops out of those beds are getting better, but they're still struggling a little bit. But you can see like stuff is trying and starting to work its way into that clay. It's just thick and dense. So, I mean, clay is clay. It's just brutal. And my experience is that just clay takes longer. All the soil health things you do, clay takes longer. It just does. Good microbes, good compost, good, that biochar may help, that sort of stuff, but it just takes time. And then broad fork it every year, try and get until it gets a little bit looser, try and get that compost to kind of fall into the cracks and break it apart. Just time. Yeah. And work. Yep. It's, but on the other hand, like sand can be the same way, just in the opposite direction. It's not as hard, but it doesn't retain anything. So you're constantly having to add a little bit more amendments and do more composting, more mulching, that sort of stuff, and just keeping constant photosynthesis. That'll help a lot. Let's see. At Amy Peary, hi Amy, asks, tomatoes in non-heated greenhouse, do you move them to the house when temps drop below 55, or do you use heat mats to create a buffer there? If so, what's your ambient temp threshold then? Thank you. In a non-heated greenhouse, do you move them into the house when temps drop below 55 degrees? No way. No, our tomatoes stay out there. So our tomatoes are in a non-heated greenhouse right now. We have a heat cables underneath there, and they will kick on around freezing. And then we will go basically, like, unless it's going to get below 25 Celsius, or 25 Fahrenheit, which is what, 4 Celsius. Unless it's going to get below that, then we keep the plants, we keep the tomatoes out there, but we will cover them. And they have that little heat wire underneath that will, kick on at 30, whatever, at freezing. And then we have a heat mat out there too, if need be. But the only way I'm going to bring them in, especially now when we're getting so much sunlight. The only way I'm going to bring them in is if it drops below like 20. And if it gets close, if it looks like it could drop below 20, I may throw an extra heater out there so I don't have to move them in and out of the house. But for the most part, no, I'm not. I'm only taking them in if I absolutely have to. It's better safe than sorry. Like I don't, if the electricity goes out or something, you don't want that. You don't want to risk that after it takes months to get tomatoes started. So generally speaking, I will, just turn up the heat a little bit, add an external little, heater out there, but only for like a night. Like I don't use that all the time. I'm not trying to keep it above 55 degrees or anything all winter just to get them growing. That doesn't really matter to me. Because for most of the day, the thing that happens, and I kind of said this a second ago, but the thing that happens is in like April and May, certainly like late March, early April, and then obviously in May, you get this huge jump in daylight. So your cold temperatures are really just not around for very long. So as long as you can retain some of that heat for long enough, like there's not as big of an issue. Now, if this were February and January, it's a different story because the cold is around for so long. It can be all day long, obviously, but it can also be like, even on a warmer day, if it drops down to 20 or 25, it's going to be there for a long time because the sun's just not coming up as early and staying out as long. So it really, like now I don't worry quite as much about it. I have tomatoes planted in an unheated tunnel, and if it's going to drop below, 32, then I'll throw a row cover over top. But we had a couple of frosts this week. I suspect we're probably not going to drop much, if any, below, 32 anytime, which would be freezing in Celsius. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. So maybe, but it's been such a warm spring already. I have my doubts, but anyway, knock on wood on that one because it could be 25 next week, and I could, be eating my words. Let's see, but good stuff, Amy. Hopefully that was helpful. At Christopher Galloway asks, fighting mosquitoes while moving to natural and regenerative from Clemson, South Carolina. So I guess the question is like, what would I do about mosquitoes? And your biggest thing with mosquitoes, well, there's two things, right? You don't want a ton of standing water. You need some for the birds and the bees and stuff to drink. But like, hopefully that's like a pond or a lake or something that's like got a little bit more movement in it. But the biggest thing is just like, birds, bats, like all the dragonflies, like having a pond is nice in that way because dragonflies and all those things really like ponds. Excuse me for a second. Yep, allergies attacking. But that's the biggest thing for me is just your birds are going to help a ton. Like hummingbirds eat a ton of them. Dragonflies eat a ton of mosquitoes. All sorts of, all of your flycatcher birds. So this is the thing. Like a lot of these imbalances that we see in ecosystems have a lot to do with just biodiversity loss. Like we have to make room for bugs, and bugs will make room for more birds, and we have to make habitat for birds. We have to protect birds, and so on and so on. Like, try and get to that point that we have more and more predators because that says we have more and more prey for whatever it is, and on down the line. So when you see more hawks and you see more eagles and, like the major predators, that means you're doing a good job in that area or in general, because that means they have enough prey, and that means that prey has enough prey and so on. So, just whatever you can do to encourage birds is a good part of it. And then like, I don't know, I'm not like out spraying stuff. I guess there's probably stuff you could, but we get mosquitoes here too, but they're not generally as bad. And I don't know if that's a bird thing or if that's just like, we're not really in a place that they get super bad. But yeah, I used to, growing up, like obviously we had tons of mosquitoes, and there are days where I'm like, the mosquitoes are out of control today, but by and large, yeah, it's not so much of a problem. And eat lots of garlic. That will also help. I find that they and most things kind of stay away from you when you eat a lot of garlic. So so eat a lot of garlic. Especially if you're an introvert. But good question. At Microbes Russ asks, is there life in clay soils? Oh yeah, absolutely. Am I hurting anything by tilling for a new garden? No. Always Broad Forkton, Wisconsin, but this compaction level is about 1.5 feet in, or 1.5, I think you mean feet, in Mississippi where I'm at. So, all right. So is there life in clay soils? Absolutely. It's dense, but as there's a decent amount of microbial life in there, as long as it's not smelling anaerobic. That's one thing with clay is like, you can smell it, and you can smell the difference between like clay that's like actively alive that just smells like normal soil, dirt, clay, and clay that's like anaerobic, so it has gotten just where it isn't draining at all, and it smells like manure or something. It smells rotten, like your disgust senses will go wild, and that's when like you've got to do some work. And am I hurting anything by tilling for a new garden? I don't know if anything is an easy thing to answer. You're hurting something, almost certainly, but are you doing more harm than will be? Like when it. I guess one way to think of it is like, it's often with starting a new garden, it's maybe one step back and like to never have to look back again. So like, yes, maybe you're doing some temporary damage, but if you're injecting like a bunch of compost and some good soil organic matter and maybe some biochar and some good amendments or whatever, then like that harm will ultimately be beneficial down the line, as long as you're not doing it at the wrong time. You're not doing it when the soil is too wet. Like I talked about in that potato video the other day, you want to make sure that it's that 8-10 inches down wherever you're tilling, that you're, it's not slicking in your fingers. But if you're injecting like some good soil organic matter in there, or some good organic matter rather, then no, ultimately like you're making that more hospitable to life, right? And like we do that. I mean, I don't know if this analogy is going to make sense, but I'm going to try it. But like we do that with cities too, right? So like you think about how we have to, like when we're wanting to build a hospitable place for humans, we often have to like kind of level stuff and make sure everything, all the plumbing and everything is intact. And then we can start building on top of that versus just like throwing up a house wherever. And, maybe that's not great. Like maybe that's not a great analogy because sometimes we do a lot of damage that way. But if we were like ecologically minded, we could do that in a way that benefits the environment and makes it hospitable to humans. So, in the same sort of idea applies to soil. If you do it in a respectful, thoughtful way, it can be more beneficial to the microbes. You can create more pockets of life for them. But yes, I mean, you're almost certainly always going to be harming something, but you're always going to be harming something when you harvest. You're stealing the microbes' food when you harvest. You're doing all sorts of damage. Like that's just, it's this relationship between life and death. That's what we do. So you have to just kind of find your balance there, I guess. But yeah, no, I mean, I think, the broad forking will help, even there in Mississippi. When you're in a more tropical climate, certainly, like when you're in a colder climate, things don't move as fast. Like the soil and the surface level probably doesn't get as warm as the soil does like 6 inches down in Mississippi. I mean, that's a guess, but like it's very warm in Mississippi. So in a more tropical, hotter, subtropical sort of situation, your success is a lot to do with managing the biomass. So like the growing biomass will have a huge effect on your soil's ability to decompact, to grow plants, to really get those roots, for the plants to really get those roots down in that sort of stuff. And so managing that moisture too, because it can also get dry there. But yeah, the humidity and stuff makes it complicated. But yeah, broad forking still makes sense, especially if in that broad forking you are allowing compost to fall in the cracks. Like I always say with broad forking, like the goal is to reduce your the reliance on the broad fork, to make it obsolete. So that's the goal. You want to do it till you don't have to do it anymore, till the soil is soft, and maybe you only have to do it on occasion or in certain spots. That's kind of where we've gotten on this farm. I don't broad fork every bed. We're a little bit cooler than you are, but we're definitely warmer than Wisconsin and in general for a longer period of time. And it can be a lot to keep up with. But yeah, I mean, that's been helpful to us, and even on this heavy clay soil. So best of luck there. Good question. And let's see, I'm going to take a quick break. We're going to do a quick ad read, and then I will get you another set of questions here. And this one is going to be from Grown By. Grow smarter with Grown By, the farmer-owned cooperative. Grown By is the platform for online sales of everything, custom and traditional CSAs, halves of flower bouquets, wholesale to restaurants, and now Grown By supports in-person sales too. With their new app, Grown By Register, you can supercharge your market and farm stand, finally bringing together your online and offline sales and customer data. Grown By is proud to make local food accessible by processing SNAP. That's really cool. Processing SNAP benefits online and in person right within the app. Grown By helps you put your best food forward. Schedule a demo today at coop.grownby.com/no-till. Shouts to them. Shouts to all of our supporters. I mean, this is like, our business model is so weird, but like we, really appreciate people that understand, like we should keep growing information free and accessible to anyone and everyone. That's, the whole goal with what we do. So we really appreciate the people that support us. And so big shouts to them. Let's see what we got next. At the Magnanimous 23, I'll bet 23 is for Michael Jordan. Just going to throw that out there. It's popularized that number in the same way that Pele popularized the number 10. Anyway, any thoughts on disking versus plowing old pasture to kill sod and perennial weeds? What would you do assuming you have a tractor? I mean, I'm fine with disking in a sense, but generally speaking, like you're just not going to get, I don't know. I mean, it depends on the state of the compaction in that area, because what I would ideally do, like if I have to break up a new ground from scratch and it's a little bit compacted, I'd rather run a ripper or something through it first and then disc it. But in general, no, discs does a good job. The biggest thing is just, all the concern with plowing is that you're worried about erosion and those sorts of things. So you have to just time it well and be thoughtful about, how big of an area you're doing at a time and how, when the rains are going to happen. And yeah, I mean, anything you can do to sort of break up that lower compaction too, if you're doing this like a larger scale, that will make a huge difference down the line. And if you can get some compost down first, that is preferred, especially if you're going to do that ripping. Like if you can get a nice layer of compost down, rip it, let some of that compost fall into the cracks, and then do your, your disking. And then you may have to disc it and then come back in like a couple weeks and then disc it again after it's been rained on or whatever, just to get that first flush of weeds out of the way and kill some of that sod that survived. I mean, it takes a little time to do it that way, but that's people do it that. Yeah, that's not like some people will flip the whole thing over with a, moldboard plow or something, or some people just use the disc, which we did on a farm. We did on a property once and it was fine. And then I made the beds using a BCS. I made all my 30-inch beds at the time and that worked fine. I mean, it wasn't like, I didn't have any issues with it. So assuming you do have a tractor, that's the way to go. Ian at Grindstone Farms asks, I finally tracked down some of the local tree chippers and they've dumped what I'm guessing is about 60 yards of wood chips on my farm. Is there a passive way to break these down? Lasagna style-esque. Passive way to break them down. Your biggest thing with wood chips is time and water, like moisture. Getting moisture to the middle of a wood chip pile can be really tough because they're somewhat hydrophobic. So like they'll absorb it or they'll even just like let it fall through. So one thing you could do, depending, I'm assuming you're not going to want to repile it. If you're going to repile it, you could do what we've done in the past, which is just add some sort of nitrogen blood meal or whatever, like do layers and then add a lot of moisture. So you could put like a drip tape or something over top and just kind of let it run that every once in a while just to get that moisture in there, and throw a tarp or something over top of it just to kind of lock that moisture in there. Because, I mean, it's like with anything, like you need moisture, you need, a little bit of nitrogen for the microbes, and that sort of stuff will help to break it down. But that's the most quote unquote passive way, I guess, is just throw some water in there and maybe a tarp over top, and that will speed it up a little bit. But if you're expecting it to be good this year, it's probably going to take, take a full 6 months to really get like to where some of it's nice and broken down, even with some good moisture. And 60 yards is a fair amount. So yeah, that may take some time. Sorry, I'm going to take a drink. All right, let's see. And shouts to all of you for coming and hanging out with me. I love this. This is always so much fun because I get such a diversity of questions, and we can kind of bounce other questions off of, like maybe one question leads to another. So I love this. This is super fun. All right. At Your Friendly Designer. Cool. Setting up in in-ground beds in my urban Nebraska yard and debating what to use for pathways. Currently fescue and whatever weeds. Would you recommend leaving the grass? Is mulch worth it? Another idea. There in Nebraska, I mean, I'm assuming you're not getting tons and tons of rain. So like if you have access to wood chips, that may be a decent option to put some wood chips down in those pathways. Living pathways is like a whole other thing. It's just so, it's very involved. Like you cannot do living pathways passively. And the reason I say that is because if any of that happens to be Bermuda grass or something, and it starts to really creep, or crabgrass or something, and it really starts to creep in there, then that can be a big challenge for getting it out of there. And I've had issues just from our living pathway experiments, was in particular with chickweed and purple nettle that are over winter, right? They're flowering now, which is like fine. I mean, they don't bother a lot because we're not growing in the field over the winter, but in the spring when I need to get those beds ready, I'm always like, oh, this stuff is in the way. And it's because I let it go a little long in the pathways. And that's my fault because I was trying to like maximize the photosynthesis there, and I just overdid it one year, and I've been paying for it ever since. So you really have to stay on top of it. So I don't recommend it for like the casual gardener. Like if you're going to do it professionally and you're going to be managing your pathways anyway. So, consider Living Pathways. For like the casual gardener, like wood chips may make more sense because they'll probably hold it down, especially in a place like Nebraska, better than they would here, where we get regular heavy rainfalls that just wash it out. Like it's not helpful to us. But yeah, no, I mean, I think it's, you can do it. Like if you have a mower, and you can get some clover in there, you can do it. Certainly. I think the clover's nice. It kind of blocks stuff out in the spring a little bit better. But yeah, I mean, it's it's a challenge. And, if you're going to play around with Living Pathways, start small, just do a few and then kind of expand it from there maybe. But yeah, no, I think that's a cool option. Good luck with that. At CK Henson asks, Jesse, I used mixed seed ground cover in summer before fall planting. I have to hand cast it because of the different size seeds. Is there a machine that handles mixed seeds of different sizes? Not really. I mean, there probably is like on a large scale, but like on a small scale, you really like, okay, so let's say for instance, I want to sow I often do this in the fall, and I think I've talked about this before, but let's say I want to sow crimson clover and Lacey Phacelia and rye and I don't know, cilantro or something. The cilantro and rye are maybe close enough that I could use the same seeder, whereas the crimson clover and the Lacey Phacelia are a little bit smaller, so I'd probably want to use different. So what I'll often do is I'll sow one of them by hand, and then I'll run over the other ones with a seeder, which isn't saving you any time here, but for me, that's a little easier than switching to another seeder and then going over top of it, because I find hand broadcasting super fast. And they have like little spinners that you can get, right? Like those little spin seeders. I think Earthway makes one. They're just like little handheld spin seeders. I've never used one. I've never, not since I was an intern have I needed to do it on that much space like we used to do. When I was an intern, we were doing 2.5 acres of vegetables. And that's a lot to cover crop, right? By pushing. So what we would do is we'd hand broadcast it, and then we'd run over that with a harrow, just like a what do they call them? Tooth harrow, some sort of tooth harrow. Forget the name of them. But we'd run over it with one of those, and that would just like, kind of push some soil on top, and then it would get rained on, and then we'd get our cover crop that way. But that's super fast. You can do an acre in like no time. But yeah, I mean, just depends. Like for the different size seeds, and this goes with like really any crop. I'm just looking at the seed, and I'm looking at the seeder and trying to figure out what makes the most sense. And we have like the Jing seeder, which I'll use for certain crops, and then other crops I'll have to mix it different ways. It's all just depends on there's been so one time I ordered, maybe I've talked about this before, but I don't know. I ordered buckwheat seed once, and I got like a European buckwheat seed, and the yield per pound was crazy. Like, because it was just, the seeds were super, super small. They were like no buckwheat I'd ever seen. And so if you were to use the same plate that you usually use for buckwheat, you would have way overseeded it. So in this case, like I just had this really small seed, so I had to adjust what seeder I normally use for buckwheat to account for just a randomly smaller size seed. So that's a thing. That's just just have to just play it by ear in that case. All right, at Meoster 10 asks, that's the Pele number. Hi, Jesse. Mike from Lazy Creek Farm in Huntingburg, Indiana. Sorry, I also shouts to Indiana. I love Indiana, but as a Kentuckian, like obviously we have to battle each other a little bit. But anyway, I do have fun in Indiana. What do you think about the Johnson 2 bioreactor? Okay, I don't have any problems with it. It seems like I've never done it myself, and the main reason for that is largely just like I don't totally see the payoff in terms of like the amount of labor it takes versus the quality of the compost. I could be talked into it. I think that it probably makes like really nice compost, really, especially with the worms and everything. Like it certainly I'm down with it. I think it's a good idea. It just seems like a lot of labor to get stuff into it. Like, I don't know. It just, for me, I'm like, I'd rather just have like a nice pile, make it as good as I can, add some biochar or whatever, and make sure the ingredients and the amendments and everything is mixed together really nicely, kill all those weed seeds, and then just go from there. And if I want to take some of that and run it through a worm bin or something, then I would do it that way. But no, I don't have any problems with it. It feels like a lot of work for the amount of compost that you get out of it, but I think it probably makes good compost. I mean, that's what everybody seems to feel. So, and then I know that Dr. Johnson has done some research on it, and I don't know. I've seen some studies that seem positive about like the effects, the microbial in particular, like the fungal numbers and all those things. And I think that's cool. I got no issue with it in general. I think on a smaller scale, if I maybe had a little bit more time, I would love to just build one of those and try a bunch of different like, I don't know, composting options. I think it's cool. I don't know. There's something about having like plastic pipes right in the middle too. It's a little bit like, I don't know. But anyway, I'm in general, I think it's fine. Probably makes good compost. But yeah, so let's see. At Brutal 5 asks, home gardener in Western Kentucky, shouts to the Hilltoppers, how do you grow cool weather crops when the last frost date is after like a month or two of 80-degree days? Is greenhouse the only way? How do you grow cool weather crops when the last frost date is like a month or two of 80-degree days? Yeah, I mean, you don't. I don't know. Like this is the thing that's weird about Kentucky and the South. Like it's really, really difficult to grow cool season crops like in the fall, like broccoli and that sort of stuff. It's just tough. I mean, you can grow it, but it takes good soil moisture, good fertility, and maybe occasionally shade cloth just thrown over top, which, is not ideal. It's a lot more work. But on super hot days, you may want to throw some shade cloth over top. But the thing is, all those brassicas, like you go north and you see all these like cabbages, cauliflowers, all this stuff like look really, really nice, even in somewhat hotter places in the north. And a lot of that has to do with those colder nights. Like those brassicas just like colder nights, right? They're from more Mediterranean, drier climates. And so, yeah, a lot of times that's what they prefer. So in Kentucky, it's just not that. And same with most of the South, like our nights just don't cool off very much. Some of the people in the mountains, like in Asheville and those areas, I've seen them grow pretty nice brassicas, like those fall season brassicas. But yeah, I mean, things like, I don't know, lettuce and stuff, it can be really tough. Like we grow lettuce all summer, but it is a battle. Yeah, I mean, it can be done. It's just, it depends on how much work you want to put into it. And ideally with something like, your cool season longer crops like Brussels sprouts, broccoli, and that sort of stuff, you're not putting any extra work into it that you don't have to, just because there's like almost no profit in them anyway. They're fun to grow. I mean, cauliflower is maybe my favorite food, but it's a lot of work in our climate. So, it can be done. It's just, it depends on how much work you want to put into it. Let's see. Brackets, Petals, and Produce ask, what veggies do you struggle to sell at your farm market located in southern Arkansas? Couldn't sell eggplant last year. Yeah, eggplant's a tough one. It's a farmer's market. Depends on your market. I mean, I think I talked about, didn't I do it? I did eggplant, right? Yeah, just the last week or the week before. It's a tough crop to sell. I mean, it's more of a CSA crop. And if you have like people who use it a lot in their cuisines, depending on what your market is, then you can sell it. But yeah, I mean, that's not one. Like there's lots of stuff that we've tried in the past. Fennel, which is like one of my favorite things. I love fennel. I can only sell a handful. Like I can sell it 1 week, I sell a decent amount, and then that's it. Like people are like, cool, I had fennel, and then they're done. So that's like a crop that I would love to grow more of, but I just don't have more of. I don't have more customers for. So there's some of those crops that really are like a one and done kind of crop. Then let's see. I didn't sell as many peppers and tomatoes at our market because there were just a lot of peppers and tomato growers, like when we were doing the farmer's market. So I had to get creative. So we grew a lot of carrots, a lot of beets, a lot of lettuces, a lot of radishes, stuff that they didn't want to mess with. Like I was fine not messing with tomatoes because when you do the numbers, they can be a little tough to make money on, or at least just not as profitable as other things. So for me, I was like, all right, well, you all do that. I'll grow peppers for myself because I want to eat Carmen sweet pepper all day long, every day. And then, we focused on the lettuces and the more difficult stuff that they didn't want to mess with. And that worked out swimmingly for us. And then, we would try stuff every once in a while. I'd be like, how would dill sell? How would, cilantro sell? And how would, because we get a lot of requests, especially in the summer, for things like cilantro. And you got to try some things because you never know. In the summer, people are making a lot of salads. So that's why when we have in the middle of the summers when we sell the most lettuce, not because lettuce is the most in season, but because people are making the most salads. So like I'm always trying to think like what else would they want for their salad? So like cucumbers, what else do people use in salads? The fennel worked well occasionally. Just like whatever else people may want in a salad was like that made sense to me. And things like you'd be surprised though, like okra would do okay. And I was always like stunned at how well that would sell because it turns out a lot of people won't bother growing it. So sometimes just like when people aren't growing something, that's when you get the best opportunity to grow it. Let's see. But yeah, I hope that's helpful. At Delights of the Earth asks, Dad says that the Albion have changed things up and the players are loving actually playing. Have you seen any changes? We have yet to catch a game. Yeah, they've been playing great. I mean, I don't know specifically tactically what Hertzler has done there, but yeah, I mean, things have been going great. Brighton, yeah, everybody keep an eye on Brighton. We're coming for a European spot here soon. I love my Albion. I get very excited about my soccer. But yeah, like we're headed into the home stretch of the Premier League. So if you want to get into it, now's the time because there's going to be some shakeups here, and if we keep winning, we're going to be playing some European football next year. So that'll be fun. Yeah, great question. Shouts to the Albion. All right, let's see. Microbes Russ asks, where do you source cover crops? Have went to a few local co-ops and none have sold a multi-blend cover crop. Well, one thing I'll say is that I don't really buy multi-blend cover crops. I buy them all individually because a lot of times, like, I don't know, it just depends on the situation. Like maybe I don't want, a certain species in there that I've like, because of the thing that we talked about earlier with the different size seeds, or because maybe I'm like, I don't know if I want vetch in this particular spot because I want to be able to kill it with just crimping it in the spring. So maybe I do want it in this rye area, but I don't want it in this other one where I'll just use peas for the nitrogen and the peas will die and then the rye will grow up and then I can smash that down. Because it just depends. So like usually I'm buying them individually and I'm never buying so much that I have to worry about it. Everybody's like, wants the cheapest cover crop seed. And I'm always just like, I don't know, I'm ordering everything from Johnny's. I get like a discount there. I'm just going to get my 10 pounds of whatever from them. Or maybe I buy it from High Mowing or whoever I'm already ordering from. I don't like go and try and find a new supplier for everything to save a handful of dollars on that. I get if you have to like do it, but like, a lot of times when you're thinking about the amount of time it takes you to do that, and then you're thinking about your shipping costs and everything, like it ends up being the same. So I just don't worry too much about it. I usually just source it from wherever I can get organic cover crop seed. And I mean, I haven't had like issues doing it that way. And I'm sure there have been times when I've overpaid, but by and large, like that's the way that we've done it. And then sometimes I want like a specialty thing like Suspania, and I have to go find that at, I forget, like Harris Seeds or somebody random that sells it. Maybe it's like Osborne or something. And then the other thing too, the only other thing to think about is like, I don't like sourcing from random people because I've ordered cover crop seed before and it came all treated and it didn't say treated like in the description, or at least I didn't catch it. And that's really frustrating because I can't use, but I'm not going to. Well, I couldn't at the time because we were certified organic, but I'm not going to. Like, there's just no reason to treat seeds. Like, there's zero reason. It is not going to help you. So like, I'm talking about with like fertilizers and chemicals and stuff. Like it's just with pesticides, fungicides, all that stuff. So just like that's the one thing you have to be really, really conscious of is if it comes and it's like brightly colored or like has something that's not just like a white dusting on it of like clay or whatever. You got to make sure that you're not putting that down in your soil. So that's the only thing with sourcing. And that's why oftentimes I'm like High Mowing, Johnny's, these people, Fedco, whatever, like I trust them to not be selling me that stuff. And it usually says if it's treated. So, that's probably all I could add for sourcing. Let me get a drink real quick. At Ethan Kavanaugh asks, I started Tom's tomatoes February 28th and just potted them up this week. They are very leggy and will go to seedling greenhouse soon. Any tips to help with the legginess? Some stems wrapped the root ball, but not many. If you get really leggy plants, especially with tomatoes, well, I mean, really just with tomatoes, the genius of them is they grow out of the stem. So like when you're potting them up, just flip them over And so like basically turn the whole ball over so that the seedling pops up through the pot, right? So like basically you're just shortening it, but it has all that stem touching soil, and it'll grow out of the stems and it'll do fine. Like we used to do that with all of our tomatoes. The only reason I stopped is because we started grafting. So, yeah, I mean, that's what I would do is just flip it over. Or when you plant it, like if it's super leggy, you can, as long as it's not stiff, like if it's stiff, you can break it, right? So you got to be careful when you're doing that. But if it's leggy and it's like kind of flimsy, yeah, just flip it over. It'll actually be happier that way. Yeah, in some way, and I mean, it's not like you want to intentionally make them leggy, but in a leggy situation, yeah, that can work. Let's see. And at Jamie Martin asks, I went to a no-till garden 3 years ago. I never had a problem with tree roots until I stopped tilling. Is there an easy way to keep them out of my gardens? All of these trees are not on my property. I mean, yeah, that can be tough, right? Like you can till the edges. You can use like a spade shovel to just chop them. You can put in a barrier of some sort of wood or something that it'd be hard for them to get through. But yeah, I mean, that's one thing that's always going to be a problem when you stop tilling next to trees. Not always, but certain trees. Is that the tree roots are going to want to sneak in there. So if you can just go down the fence line or whatever it is where those trees are to just like chop the roots, that will discourage them. I mean, that may help. And you may get suckers that way because if you sever it, then they may pop up. But sometimes you deal with like really thick tree roots, in which case you'll have to like literally till it up to get rid of them. Yeah, that's tough. That's not a situation I've had to deal with, but it's certainly one that I could see, be becoming a major problem for some people. Excuse me. Allergies still here. All right. The Perma Patch asks, we will be selling starts for the first time this season. What are some must-have crops to have on offer, and how many different varieties for each type? It depends a little bit on your market. People like the stuff they know. So oftentimes with like tomatoes, you want a handful of cherries, but you really want like Cherokee Purple and, the crops that, like maybe they would they would recognize, whatever those may be in your area. Like Early Girl is one that often people ask for. Also another one, just low key, really good one to have for plant starts is basil, because people just like a basil plant. If you put it in a big enough pot, they feel like they don't even have to plant it. And we haven't done a ton of selling starts, but in the past, yeah, like that can be a really good moneymaker, especially in the spring, just to get cash flow. What else? Peppers, you need a bell pepper, you need a jalapeno, just stuff that people recognize. I mean, you don't want to go too crazy on the different varieties. It's really just about having those varieties that people know. Or just ones you're passionate about. Be like, this is my favorite red slicing tomato, or this is my favorite red pepper. You have to grow it. And oftentimes they'll come back and be like, that was awesome. Thank you. Do you have that again next year or whatever? So I would stick with the ones people know and the ones you're most passionate about, and then just kind of go from there. And then again, yeah, like basil, you could have some things like cilantro plugs and maybe some lettuce heads. People really like little lettuce heads plugs. Those are simple, easy to do. Let's see. I'm going to try and blow through some of these because I've got just a handful of minutes left here. Let's see. Cole Dini asks, ever read Farming the Woods and thought about experimenting with it? Oh, Farming in the Woods. I think I have that book. Interesting way to keep some biodiversity. Yeah, I'm all about that. I love the woods. I love herbs. I love mushrooms. I love just being in the woods. I love, any sort of like using the coppicing and all those things. You could do like willows and all, you could do so much stuff out of the woods. There's flowers that you can grow out of the woods. I'm all about it. I don't have good woods here, but that's like you can do maple syrups, you can do walnut syrups, you could do all sorts of stuff out of the woods. Sure, go for it. If you've got some of that space and you have the time and maybe the investment, ginseng, black cohosh, all that. Yeah, absolutely. It's very fun. Stephen Cardinell asks, are you still off of the commercial compost? Have you worked on a percentage of your wood chips into your compost pile to increase your yield? Yeah, we haven't really bought commercial compost in a long time. We bought some, let me say, a long time is maybe not right. We bought some last year and it was okay. And I wasn't super happy with it. And I was just kind of like, ugh. I'm trying to figure out, like I'm putting myself in the position to have to figure these things out, and I'm doing okay at it. And it's just a mixture of like just whatever I have. And it's okay. I've mixed in, the wood chips. I've been trying to utilize more of those. And it's just, there's only so much you can do on your own. So one of the things that I'm talking to that oak, for that oak project I talked about earlier, is looking into getting a mower collector, because I would love to have more of our own nitrogen and mulch. So yeah, that's kind of the goal. So yeah, I mean, that's always going to be an issue. Let's see. At Homer Mounts MTZ asks, Jesse, if you were stranded in an island with 3 crops, would you grow everyone else? Oh, what would you grow? Okay, so for me, Carmen sweet pepper, garlic. Third one, probably be, potatoes. I just love potatoes. I'm like such a big potato fan. That seems like not a very, I'd have to forage a little bit for the extra nutrients, but I think it'd be worth it. Potatoes, I love potatoes. They're not my favorite crops to grow. Peppers I love growing. But yeah, that would probably be my 3. Oh man, I wouldn't have any spice. Oof, that's hard. Maybe I would, the topper popper, right? Sweet and spicy. So that would do it. All right, wait, I need to get a shout to Aussie Fuss for the super chat. Hit that like button if you haven't already. Shouts, Aussie Fuss. That's super, super thankful for you. And another one to Maria 5074. Thanks for all the research and giving us a platform to chat with each other and learn together. Awesome. Super shouts to you all. All right, I'm going to take, let's say, 2 more questions. Let me see if I can find some people that I know have not asked any. Let's see. Christine Johnson asks, ground surface of propagation house/greenhouse, does it have to be plastic gravel or can it be something like wood chips? Pros and cons. Oof. I mean, it's a very annoying place to deal with. I mean, preferably it's like cement and you can just wash it off. Gravel is going to be tough because what happens, like what you ultimately see is you get this situation where you're watering your plants and all of that is like dripping down onto the floor, and whatever's on the floor is just collecting soil, and then some, weeds blow in, some dandelions, some grass comes in on your shoes, and it just gets like, grassy or weedy in there. And it's just, gravel is tough in that way because it's going to build there in the gravel, and that's harder to get rid of. I found that the landscape fabric works okay for us. Partially because I don't know if I want to keep that greenhouse there. Maybe I want to move it around. So I don't want to put something super, super permanent down there. But at the end of the season, like it gets a little weedy by July or August, not going to lie. But I usually like pull the weeds just as I see them or as they're in the way. And then in the winter, every year when it's cold, I just take everything out, I sweep it all clean, and then I put everything back, and it's like good to go. That's been the easiest thing for me. It's just not. Like it's always going to be a challenge unless you have like a good cement or hard surface that you can wash off and, like just spray it off or sweep it off really easily every week or something. So ideally you don't have to move stuff around, like the lean philosophy of everything being off the floor and the floor being really accessible. That's nice. I mean, if you can do that, then yeah, go for that. But and you could do that with landscape fabric. You could sweep it every day if you wanted. I mean, there's no perfect answer, and some of them are more slick than others too. Like if you start getting into things like harder gravels and that, or harder, like concrete or something, and you don't get the right grade and it's not rough enough, it could be slick and that could be dangerous. And it's just like, it adds up. It's like there's no perfect answer there. There's probably a lot of imperfect answers. Like you don't want to just go on grass, unless you could keep it mowed. Then I guess I could see that working. I don't know. Then you could just like mow it and then collect it. And then you'd have like all of your plants, like, giving nutrients to the grass. I'm giving people bad ideas there. Maybe I should not, but yeah, I mean, could work. All right. One more, let's see. All right, so Joseph Grimes. Oh, I feel like you're a new Patreon member. Or Joseph, I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong, but they say, thinking about selling my house and buying a little lost old block. Could you give me a rough, quick idea on how I could do this and make it work, but I'll keep driving trucks for 3 days of the week? Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming by, lost old block, you probably mean like a, some sort of smaller farm that you could work from. I mean, the big thing with that is probably just, gearing what crops you're growing around how often you're going to be there. So if you're going to be gone 3 days a week and maybe sometimes 4, just depending on how things go, right? Like, then you're probably going to want like kind of a plant it and forget it sort of crop. And then maybe like a home garden that you can just come back and harvest every once in a while. But if you can get like, I don't know, there are plenty of people that have done sort of a part-time farming gig where you basically like put in your tomatoes or your whatever, and then you mulch it really well so you're not having to worry about weeds. And then you just come in and you just harvest what's there. Like, sure, that can totally work. I don't see any, real problem with doing it that way. It just depends on what you want to grow. Like if you don't really like, if you wanted to grow like corn, like popcorn and squashes and stuff that you can kind of set it and forget it. I think, you could do that pretty easily. Just plant it and come back, check on it, cultivate it if need be, and then you just kind of wait until everything's ready to go. And then maybe you take that and you trade, maybe you buy in your tomatoes or more difficult lettuces and that sort of stuff. But and then there's also, you can automate a lot of stuff too. If you really want to go for like hardcore crops, you can automate like all your irrigation and all of your watering in your greenhouse. You could really do it up if you wanted to, but just depends on what your goals are really. What I'm going to do actually right now is I'm going to read one more ad read and then I'll do one more question and then we will bounce and I will rest my poor nose who just wants to run. Let's see. All right. This last one is from our good friends over there at Good Agriculture. Good Agriculture handles farm, bookkeeping, and tax filing. 'Tis the season, ding, ding. So there is no scrambling at tax time. They keep your books clean and up to date and show you where your farm's finances stand. If you're behind, they'll get you caught up. They also help farmers find funding and stay ahead of grant deadlines. You run the farm, they help the business. Learn more at goodagriculture.com/info. All right, let's get one more question, then we will be out. I'm going to go with, let's see, I want to make sure all right, so Country Living asks, 3633, asks, any tips on growing carrots in Minnesota Zone 4B? Thanks. So deep compost mulch is like awesome for carrots. If you do it on one bed, deep compost mulching will reduce like so much of the weed issues. The biggest thing with carrots, depending on what time of year you're planting them, is moisture. They need to stay moist until they germinate. So that could be like in the spring, that could be 14 or 20 days. In the summer, that could be 7 days, 10 days. So they need to stay moist. So what that means is that you have to get them irrigated really well and then cover them, throw some tarp if you have like a white tarp over top. Oftentimes like the black tarp flipped upside down or some row cover or something, cardboard, whatever you can do to get that moisture to stay in there. They can't be too hot, so you don't want it in like the boiling sun. So if you are using compost mulch in the middle of the summer, make sure that stays wet, but also cool. And really that's like the other biggest thing is just making sure to make sure that soil is loose before you have it go before you plant, so that those carrots are really easy to get out. I've done some videos on carrots. I love growing carrots, grown carrots for years. And it's always been one of my favorite crops. And I think like one of the biggest game changers for us was just switching to, deep compost mulch for most carrot beds. If you're not doing deep compost mulch, you have to make sure your weed seed bank is in check. So that can mean like a bare fallow. So you get it all ready to plant carrots and then you're just like, psych, not planting my carrots, and you let stuff germinate and then you cultivate that and then you plant your carrots. If you have a flame weeder, that could be an option too. You plant them, you wait a few days, like in the summer, you'd wait 5 days and then you'd flame weed it. And then that will kill anything that popped up before the carrots. And then the carrots will come through. I mean, weeds are the second biggest issue. So moisture is the first one in my mind. You have to keep them moist. The second one is weeds, because weeds, carrots are slow growing. Try some of the faster growing carrots too first, like to get your sort of program down. And then you can try some of the longer ones. So some of the faster ones is like Mokum. They take like 50, 60 days. Whereas like the Romance and those take like 70 days. So it's a lot longer, a lot slower to grow. And don't bother with those rainbow carrots because they're really difficult and they're kind of annoying and they don't actually taste that good unless you roast them. I said it. All right. I think we're going to call it a day here. I just want to say thank you all so much for coming out. Don't forget, No Till Growers is a 501c3, so donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. Please make sure to like and subscribe and or follow wherever you're getting this podcast. That is an easy way to help us out as well. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors. And if you'd ever like to sponsor this show, you can reach out to the wonderful Farmer Michelle at no-tillgrowers.com. Huge shouts to Michelle. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music, Mike Hilbert for the production help and editing, and whatever this you want to call this, being the chat guy. So big shouts to Mike for all of his help, and my wife Hannah for absolutely everything in the world. Also, shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can normally hear. You can pick up a hat to support our work or a copy of my book, The Living Soil Handbook, at no-tillgrowers.com. And a big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/no-tillgrowers, where usually when you you sign up at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, you sign up in the month of April, you get a shout out on the show, but we'll do that tomorrow. So anyway, thank you all so much for coming by. It has been a blast. I love this. We will see you all soon. Bye.